Hands on the ground. I said down. Now. He didn't resist. Didn't speak. Didn't blink. He just stared through them like they weren't even there. They slammed him onto the sidewalk. Searched his wallet. Laughed at the fake badge. But 7 minutes later, 4 black SUVs pulled up to the precinct, and a woman in a navy suit stepped out. Release him. Immediately. You just arrested one of ours. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching us from. The stop happened at 6:11 p.m., 2 blocks from a closed-down electronics store on the west side of Nashville. A black man, early 30s, leaned against the hood of a charcoal Mercedes. Clean shoes. Expensive watch. No plates. To officers Laskin and Brenner, it was a picture that didn't make sense. Another dealer with a taste for luxury, Laskin muttered as he unbuckled his seatbelt. They pulled up behind him slow. Lights on. No siren. Casual approach. The man didn't flinch. Didn't move. Just looked up at the clouds like he was waiting for something. Brenner stepped out first, hand near his holster. Sir, what are you doing here? The man glanced toward him. Calm. Almost bored. Waiting. Waiting for who? A small smile. No answer. Laskin came around from the other side. Got ID? The man reached into his coat slowly, deliberately. Pulled out a wallet. Inside, a Chris driver's license from Georgia and something else. What's that? Brenner asked. Badge. DHS. Must be fake. He snatched the wallet, flipping through it with a smirk. Department of Homeland Security? Please. You expect us to buy that? The man didn't respond. Turn around, hands behind your back. He didn't move. Laskin stepped closer. I said, turn around. Now. Still nothing. Then quietly. You're making a mistake. It was the way he said it. Not angry. Not defiant. Just certain. That only irritated them more. Laskin grabbed his arm. Brenner pushed his shoulder down. The man went to the ground without a fight. Cuffed. Searched. Nothing illegal. Just a plain black phone in his pocket. Locked. Untraceable. Transport him. We'll run everything at the station. He was placed in the back seat without a word. The drive took 11 minutes. At 6:24 p.m., they rolled into the precinct lot. At 6:26, someone tried calling the station. They ignored it. At 6:28, the lieutenant received an encrypted email. He never got to open it. At 6:32, 4 unmarked black SUVs pulled up outside, tires screeching. A woman in a tailored navy suit stepped out, badge already in hand. Her voice was cold and controlled. Where is he? Nobody answered. The man you just arrested. Where is he? The desk sergeant hesitated. In holding. Who are you? She didn't blink. Director Andrea Lovell. Counter Intel, Southern Division. You've just detained a federal asset. His code name is Burner. You have no idea what you've stepped into. Down the hall, behind a locked cell, the man in the gray coat finally looked up at the camera. Still silent. Still waiting. But now, everything was in motion. Holding cell number 3 was cold, windowless, and smelled like bleach. The man in the gray coat sat on the bench, wrist resting calmly on his knees. He hadn't spoken since arriving. Not during booking. Not when they fingerprinted him. Not even when one of the officers made a joke about delusional types with toy badges. He simply stared at the corner of the ceiling where the security camera blinked red. Sergeant Miller stood outside the door, arms crossed, confused. He hasn't asked for a lawyer, he muttered. Lieutenant Brooks walked up behind him. Because he knows he won't need one. You believe that, Badge? I believe he hasn't said a single word since we brought him in. That's not how scared men act. That's how trained men act. Inside the cell, the man blinked slowly, deliberately. Still watching that camera. Down the hallway, Director Andrea Lovell placed a folder on the front desk. This is your last chance to correct the mistake quietly. Captain Reyes walked in behind her, face already tense. What's going on? Lovell didn't flinch. You detained a covert federal operative mid-operation. You didn't call it in. You didn't report the badge. You didn't verify the ID. Instead, you paraded him in here like some punk off the street. Reyes scoffed. Then maybe your agent should have acted like one. No backup. No identification protocol. What was he even doing in that part of town? Lovell's eyes narrowed. Classified. Then how are we supposed to know? She didn't answer. Just placed another folder beside the first. His cover's blown. He's no longer viable for field work. And this precinct is now part of an open federal investigation. Reyes's face shifted. You're investigating us? You detained a federal asset. Under federal law, that's a category for breach. So yes, internal review begins now. Where is he? No one moved. Lovell took a step closer. I want the cuffs off. I want the footage pulled. And I want a written statement from every officer involved. Within the hour. Back and holding number 3, Devin, though that wasn't his real name, raised his head for the first time. The camera blinked again. He smiled slightly. Sergeant Miller entered slowly. You've got people outside. Devin stood. Calmly. No aggression. No demands. Just stood. Miller stared at him for a long second. What are you? Devin tilted his head. I'm a mirror, Sergeant. You only see what you bring with you. Miller blinked. That's supposed to mean something? Devin stepped forward. The door buzzed as it unlocked. For your sake. I hope not. As he stepped out of the cell, the corridor went silent. Lovell met him halfway. You're done for today. Extraction team is en route. Devin didn't answer. Reyes watched them both from the other side of the hall. This isn't over. Lovell paused. For you? No. It's just beginning. They walked out of the precinct without a word. But the damage was already done. In 3 separate departments, internal audits had been triggered. And one of the officers who cuffed him had made a call to a reporter that morning, which meant the real storm hadn't even started. Not yet. Lieutenant Brooks closed the office door behind him and locked it. On his desk, a USB stick he wasn't supposed to have, a report he wasn't supposed to print, and a surveillance screenshot that didn't match anything in their database. He stared at the image. The man in the gray coat, the one they cuffed and processed, had no digital footprint, no criminal record, no state-issued address. The driver's license they scanned vanished from their system 18 minutes ago. Every line of entry data scrubbed. Brooks reached for the landline. It beeped once, then went silent. He tried again. Dead. He reached for his cell phone. Full signal. Dialed internal affairs. Before the call connected, his phone vibrated. Unknown number. He answered, already sweating. Lieutenant Brooks. A pause. Then a voice. Calm. Mechanical. Terminate all outbound calls. Do not discuss the subject internally. Do not copy or forward the surveillance footage. Any breach will be recorded as obstruction. Who is this? You've already been flagged. The line went dead. Brooks stared at the screen. The phone restarted on its own. Outside the office, Sergeant Miller was pacing. He'd watched Devin walk out of the cell without a fight, without protest, like he expected to leave. Miller turned to Officer Laskin. What do you think he really is? Laskin's jaw tightened. Doesn't matter. We brought him in clean. Everything by the book. Then why is Brooks locked in his office? Why is DC calling? Laskin didn't respond. They both looked up as Captain Reyes stepped out of conference room A. His face had changed. Everyone involved in the arrest is to report to room 4 for individual interviews. Federal agents will be conducting them. Interviews? For what? Chain of custody. Use of force. Authority breaches. Everything. Miller swallowed. You think this is going to IA? Reyes stared at him. This is going above IA. Meanwhile, 2 floors beneath them, in a forgotten records annex, Director Lovell handed a folder to a man in a maintenance uniform. He wasn't maintenance. He opened the file and exhaled sharply. They actually booked him under his alias? They had no idea, Lovell replied. He told them nothing? Not a word. Then why the extraction? Lovell's voice dropped. Because his silence was the signal. Above them, Lieutenant Brooks opened the file again on his screen. Where the man's ID used to be, now it read only one word in red. Redacted. He opened the surveillance feed. All files from Cell 3 had been replaced by a static loop. Timestamped. Authorized by someone using Department of Justice credentials. But no one had asked for them. The more Brooks looked, the more vanished. Report logs. Fingerprints. Intake photos. Gone. Then came the knock. 3 agents. No names. No IDs. Lieutenant Brooks. You'll come with us. Where? You're part of the record now. We need your statement. Am I under investigation? One of them stepped closer. We're not here to answer questions. Brooks hesitated. But something in their tone told him it didn't matter what he said anymore. He stood. Fine. As they led him away, Miller watched from down the hall. He's next, he muttered. Laskin didn't reply. Because deep down, he already knew. They all were. The briefing room on the 2nd floor had never been so quiet. 8 officers. 1 speaker. No names exchanged. Just a printed list, laid carefully on the desk in front of them. Director Lovell didn't sit. She didn't smile. She simply pressed her hand against the manila folder and began. Every person in this room had direct or indirect contact with a classified operative. Her voice was calm, but sterile, like reading from a script designed to outlast fear. That means you've now been entered into a security registry maintained by the Office of Federal Intelligence Oversight. Someone shifted in their chair. Lovell didn't look up. The man you arrested yesterday operates under a federal designation known only to top clearance personnel. That includes military, intelligence, and emergency continuity command. Laskin narrowed his eyes. Emergency continuity? Lovell looked at him. Finally, do you know what a gray-tier operative is? No answer. That's what he is. She let the silence do the rest. Officer Brenner cleared his throat. Then why didn't he stop us? Why let us cuff him? Lovell blinked slowly. You're assuming you were ever in control. Nobody spoke after that. She opened the folder. This is the incident timeline. Your names appear next to action markers: detainment, transport, processing, ID scanning. Her fingers tapped each entry like piano keys. As of 9 o'clock this morning, every touch point you made has been isolated in a federal ledger. That ledger will not be reviewed by your department or your union. Miller leaned forward, voice tight. So what are you saying? I'm saying your actions are now evidence. Brenner looked at Laskin. This is insane. We didn't do anything wrong. Lovell tilted her head. Didn't you? No one answered. Because the unspoken truth was heavier than any accusation, none of them had even paused to question why they stopped him. He didn't match a suspect. He didn't resist. He didn't need to. They just saw him and made a choice. Lovell closed the folder. For now, you remain in your roles. You'll receive formal notices about clearance restrictions and communication audits. Do not attempt to access internal files related to the subject. Miller blinked. Or what? Lovell's answer was soft. Too soft. Or you'll disappear for more than just the system. She left without looking back. By noon, Laskin tried logging into the precinct database. His account had been suspended. By 1:15 p.m., Miller's bank card failed at the gas station. At 2:08, Brenner's wife called him in tears. Their home internet had been disabled. No reason. No warning. The system was folding around them. And the man who caused it? Gone. No record. No trace. Not even a name. Only the word burner on a now empty holding cell log. At 5:42 p.m., Captain Reyes called an emergency meeting. Only half the officers showed up. The rest were already being interviewed in separate, sealed rooms. Someone asked the question no one wanted to hear. What happens if he comes back? Reyes didn't answer. Because he knew the truth. He never left. The email arrived at exactly 3 a.m. No subject. No sender. Just a timestamp and a .pdf attachment labeled Active Protocol, Burn Notice. Lieutenant Brooks opened it alone, in his apartment. Blinds shut, lights off. What he read made his chest tighten. Every officer involved in the arrest, including him, was listed under a temporary designation, Civil Exposure, Tier 3. The document had signatures from 3 federal divisions, none of them recognizable. At the bottom, one sentence. Subject reserves the right to initiate response directive without warning. He didn't sleep that night. At 7:45 a.m., Captain Reyes found his office door cracked open. On the desk, a manila envelope. Inside, a photo. The parking lot. The arrest. Shot from above. Not CCTV satellite. Next to the photo was a printed message. 7 words. This is what oversight feels like. At 9:12 a.m., Director Lovell received a direct call. She didn't recognize the number, but she answered. The voice on the other end was low, calm, and unmistakable. I need 10 minutes. She didn't hesitate. Named the location. The tunnels. Where the trains used to run. Click. She knew exactly what he meant. By 10:06 a.m., Lovell stood beneath a rusted overpass, just outside Nashville city limits. Concrete, spray paint, silence. Then he stepped out of the shadows. Same gray coat. Same calm stare. No security. No backup. Lovell kept her hands visible. You broke protocol. His voice was quiet, almost disappointed. So did you, she replied. He tilted his head. Why did they move on me? They thought you were a threat. He raised an eyebrow. They weren't wrong. Silence stretched between them. Lovell finally spoke again. Why did you let it happen? To see what they do. And what did you learn? He stepped forward once. That uniform still means authority, even when it's wrong. Lovell swallowed. You're burning your own cover. It's already burned. I made sure of it. She stared at him. You're going public? He shook his head. Not yet. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a phone, not his. Police issued. Tagged to Officer Brenner. He handed it to Lovell. They've been texting a local journalist. Anonymously. About me. Lovell's eyes narrowed. Who else knows? Not enough. She paused, processing. You want me to contain it? He nodded once. And make it loud. Enough for the right ears. She looked down at the phone, then back up at him. You're going to start something. He didn't smile. I already did. Then, for the first time, Lovell saw something she hadn't seen before. Not fear. Not arrogance. Strategy. He wasn't reacting to what happened. He was orchestrating it. When she looked up again, he was gone. Back into the dark tunnels. Out of sight. But the weight of his presence remained. At 11:45 a.m., Brenner's phone rang once. Unlisted caller. No message. No voice. Just a single sound. The cell door locking from the inside. And then silence. The precinct's evidence server sat in a locked chamber behind reinforced glass. Only two people had access. Captain Reyes and systems lead Tanya Vega. At 2:22 p.m., Tanya entered the chamber alone. At 2:24, she disabled the surveillance logs tied to the night of the arrest. She thought she was being careful. She wasn't. Outside, in her office, a small black USB was already inserted into her keyboard. She hadn't noticed it. Hadn't asked who left it there. Hadn't realized it was recording her keystrokes in real time. At 2:25 p.m., that data was transmitted silently, across a private satellite relay, not routed through any network the precinct could trace. 10 miles away, in an abandoned municipal center, the man in the gray coat sat behind a dusty projector screen, watching the command logs appear on his laptop. He didn't smile. He didn't flinch. He just waited for the next mistake. It came fast. At 2:42, Officer Laskin drove to a private print shop on the edge of town. In the back seat, 3 folders, 1 flash drive, and a hand-scribbled timeline he planned to mail anonymously. He told himself it wasn't betrayal. It was survival. Inside the shop, he printed 20 pages, placed them in an envelope, and walked to the postal drop box behind the building. When he returned, his car was gone. Not towed. Not stolen. Just gone. In its place, a plain white envelope taped to the curb. Inside, a printed photo of Laskin in the shop. Time-stamped. He looked around. No one there. But someone had seen everything. He turned pale. The manila folder never made it to the mailbox. Back at the precinct, Sergeant Miller received a phone call at 3:10. No voice. Just audio. 6 seconds of it. Static. Then, you never asked why you stopped him. Click. The room spun. He grabbed his keys. But when he reached the parking garage, his vehicle was already unlocked. On the passenger seat, a receipt. Printed 36 hours ago. Drugstore. Iced tea. 4:37 p.m. The same one from the arrest. He recognized the name. Devin Brooks. He stared at it. It wasn't a fake. It was the real transaction. Time-stamped before the detainment. Which meant he was never suspicious. He was innocent. The probable cause they cited in the report didn't exist. Miller dropped the receipt, backed away like it was radioactive. And high above the city, in a repurposed rail station turned Shadow HQ, Berner's phone vibrated once. A message appeared. Asset trace completed. Collapse in motion. Awaiting trigger. He didn't respond. He just walked to the wall, where a single map hung, marked with red pins. Not crimes. Not targets. Officers. All of them connected to him. To that one moment. To that one choice. He circled 2 more names. Folded the map. And whispered, Phase 2 begins tomorrow. The envelope arrived at 5:12 a.m. Hand-delivered. No return address. Sergeant Miller found it on his porch, weighted down by a single black pebble. Inside, 3 sheets of paper. Page 1, the arrest log from that evening. Page 2, the same log, edited and falsified. His initials at the bottom. Page 3, a court subpoena with his name printed in bold. He hadn't told anyone about the changes he made. Hadn't mentioned the report he cleaned up to make it look procedural. But someone knew. He sat on the steps, head in his hands, staring at the rising sun. Across town, Officer Brenner hadn't left his apartment in 2 days. He'd unplugged his modem, turned off his phone, and taped over the cameras in his laptop. But paranoia couldn't protect him from memory. At 6:44 a.m., his apartment phone rang once. No caller ID. He picked up. Hello? Silence. Then a child's voice, flat, rehearsed. Officer Brenner. What happens when a lie becomes official record? Click. He dropped the phone. Outside, a black SUV rolled slowly past his window. Unmarked. No plates. At the precinct, Captain Reyes sat across from a federal compliance officer with a stone face and a tape recorder. Sir, can you confirm the chain of custody on subject 19A? Reyes wiped his face. We processed him, held him, released him under external directive. Do you have footage? No. Deleted during system transfer. Internal copy? We tried. It's gone. Witness statement? Pause. Officers Laskin and Miller filed the original, then edited it. With your approval? Reyes didn't speak. The officer clicked his pen. Captain, let me be clear. As of this morning, the arrest in question has no official record. That makes it an illegal detainment. Reyes's eyes narrowed. That's impossible. Then show me the report. Reyes opened the precinct archive on his screen. Typed the case number. Nothing. He tried the subject's name. Nothing. He tried scanning the badge number from booking. The server responded with one word. Redacted. The compliance officer stood. The department will notify your legal counsel. You're now part of an active misconduct review. Reyes stood with him. Who was he? The man gave the faintest shake of his head. Someone your department never should have touched. At 8 p.m., in a dimly lit apartment above a pawn shop, Berner's phone buzzed. Message received. Full collapse. Precinct under inquiry. 3 resignations. 1 disappearance. Awaiting directive. He didn't reply. He walked to the window and looked down at the street, where Officer Laskin stood alone, smoking, watching the door, trying to work up the courage. Berner didn't move. He knew fear when he saw it. Laskin wasn't here to fight. He was here to beg. At 8:11, the doorbell rang. Berner didn't answer, just stared through the peephole. Laskin spoke into the wood. I know who you are. Silence. I know what we did. More silence. Then Laskin said the one thing Berner had waited days to hear. Just tell me what you want. And that changed everything. Laskin sat in the center of the room like a man awaiting sentence. He hadn't been invited in. The door had simply opened. He stepped across the threshold with the kind of silence that only fear teaches. Berner stood by the window, arms crossed behind his back, staring into the street. He didn't turn around. I read your report, he said flatly. Laskin swallowed. It was edited. I panicked. Berner still didn't turn. You edited it before the investigation began. Laskin blinked. I didn't think it would. You didn't think I mattered. Now Berner turned. His voice was quiet, controlled, surgical. You saw a man sitting alone in a clean car. No plates. No fear. And you didn't ask why. You just asked who. Laskin looked down. It wasn't personal. Berner walked slowly across the room. Of course it was. He stopped inches from him. You made it personal the moment you assumed your suspicion was enough. He placed a photo on the table. The arrest. Laskin's face clearly visible. Then another, the receipt from the store. Timestamped. Then a third, the deleted surveillance footage, somehow recovered. I don't need a courtroom, Berner said. I don't need lawyers. I don't even need the media. He leaned closer. I have truth. And in the right sequence. Truth is the most dangerous weapon in the country. Laskin's voice cracked. What do you want from me? Berner stared. I want what you took from me that day. Laskin frowned. But we let you go. Berner's jaw clenched. You didn't take my freedom. He stepped back. You took my dignity. Publicly. Deliberately. You cuffed me without charge. Pinned me to a vehicle like I was property. Filed lies, then protected them. Laskin's hands trembled. I didn't know who you were. You didn't care. Silence swallowed the room. Then Berner pulled a folded paper from his coat, laid it gently in front of Laskin. This is a confession template. You'll fill it out. Fully. No edits. No blame shifting. Laskin hesitated. And if I do? Then I delete the file on your wife's employment records. Laskin's eyes widened. How do you? She's a nurse. Applying for state licensure. She'll lose it if flagged under federal ethics conflict, which happens when your name appears in a sealed misconduct ledger. Laskin sat still, staring at the document. And if I don't sign? Berner met his gaze. Then the system treats you like it treated me. Except you don't have a badge that can disappear mistakes. Laskin didn't speak again. He just reached for the pin. Berner turned back toward the window. Not victorious. Not satisfied. Just silent. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware that one more link had just snapped. And far away, another officer, Sergeant Miller, sat in his squad car with an unsigned resignation letter in his hand. The radio crackled. But this time, the voice wasn't dispatch. It was Burner's voice, deep in the channel. You all saw the same thing. The difference is what you chose to do with it. Miller dropped the mic. Because there were no more questions left. Only choices. At exactly 7:01 a.m., Captain Reyes entered the precinct parking garage for what would be his final time. The badge scanner blinked red. Again, he scanned twice more. Nothing. On the fourth try, the screen displayed a message he'd never seen. Access revoked. Internal severity code, black. He stepped back, heart pounding. Inside the building, the front desk phone rang once. Officer Vega picked up. The voice on the other end was male, calm, direct. Is Captain Reyes in the building? No, sir. He's... Click. The line went dead. By 7:08 a.m., the elevator to the third floor locked down. At 7:11, all precinct emails were disabled. At 7:13, a news van pulled up across the street. No logo, just lenses and silence. Inside a small command room downtown, Burner stood in front of a table of case files, each labeled by hand, not with names, with dates. Each date traced back to an arrest. Every arrest began with suspicion. One file in particular was circled 3 times. April 14th, Marcus Denton. He opened it. A man, 42, wrongfully detained, released after 5 hours in holding. Died by suicide 1 week later. No charges filed. No investigation opened. No mention in the news. Burner stared at the page for a long time, then added a 4th circle. At 9 a.m., Reyes stormed into the mayor's office unannounced. I want to know who signed off on this. Mayor Claiborne looked up slowly. Sit down, Tom. Reyes remained standing. This is retaliation. I did my job. That man was federal. The mayor interrupted, sharp. And you dragged him through the street like a petty thief. Reyes stepped forward. He let it happen. You think he's innocent? Claiborne leaned back. I think you were warned. Repeatedly. And now it's not just him. You've got public defenders pulling case files, citizens demanding records, and internal audit reports leaking by the hour. Reyes's face twisted. This is a witch hunt. Claiborne sighed. No, Tom. This is what it looks like when silence breaks. At 11:46 a.m., Officer Brenner stood in his garage with a box of belongings. A folded uniform sat on top. He didn't notice the car idling across the street. Didn't see the phone on the dashboard, recording. Inside the car, Burner watched without expression. No words. No verdict. Just witness. He didn't need to act anymore. The system was eating itself. He had only peeled back the first layer. Now it rotted in full view. That afternoon, Director Lovell stood in a sealed government building, watching a live feed of Burner moving through Union Station. He blended into the crowd. No briefcase. No weapon. No protection. Her assistant turned to her. Should we intervene? Lovell shook her head. We already did. And it cost us everything. You think he'll go public? She stared at the screen. He doesn't need to. Every officer he touched is already unraveling. Then what now? Lovell whispered the answer as the screen dimmed. Now, they live with it. At 6 p.m., a reporter at Channel 4 received an unmarked envelope. Inside, 21 documents. No names. Only badge numbers. And one typed sentence on the first page. When power acts without reflection, history remembers. The station ran the story that night. The word burner was never mentioned. But the city never saw its police force the same again. 1 month later, the city had quieted, on the surface. No protests. No trials. No breaking news. But within the walls of Precinct 86, everything had changed. 3 senior officers resigned. 2 were placed under federal review. 1, Captain Reyes, was stripped of rank and reassigned to administrative duty in a storage archive. He hadn't worn a uniform since. The new acting chief, a silent man named Durant, walked the halls with a single directive. No arrests without cause. No stops without proof. Nobody argued. They remembered. At 4:45 p.m., the same time the iced tea fell to the pavement 1 month earlier, a single envelope arrived at the front desk. No postage. Hand-delivered. Officer Vega opened it carefully. Inside, a USB. No label. She plugged it into the terminal. 1 folder. 1 file. A video. She clicked. The screen lit up with grainy footage. A parking lot. A gray car. A man sitting calmly with a book. Then, the officer's approach. The commands. The cuffs. The entire arrest. Raw, unedited, time-stamped. It had been deleted, scrubbed, erased, and yet here it was in full. She covered her mouth. In the top right corner, a watermark. Truth has memory. She stood, trembling. Lieutenant, you need to see this. Downtown, in a government archive facility, Director Lovell sat at her desk reviewing internal reports. She paused when a message appeared on her secure channel. Asset burner declassified. Reassigned, status dormant. She stared at it. Dormant meant inactive, not gone, just waiting. She nodded once, then deleted the file. That night, at a corner table in a quiet jazz bar, a man in a gray coat sipped coffee. He wasn't hiding. He never had been. The bartender glanced over. Haven't seen you before. He smiled faintly. You have. You just didn't notice. The music played soft. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket. Inside, names crossed out. Not enemies. Just endings. Only one name remained. He stared at it. Then, without a word, tore the page out and burned it. Ash drifted across the table. His justice was done. No revenge. No glory. Just balance. He stood, left a 20 on the counter, and disappeared into the night. Back at the precinct, Officer Laskin arrived early for his overnight shift. He greeted no one. He didn't smile. He just moved quietly, logged in, and reviewed incoming reports. He would never wear his old rank again, would never command a unit. But he came back, not because he was forgiven, but because now he understood the weight of authority and the price of silence. He reached into his drawer, pulled out the printed statement he once tried to shred, and stapled it to the wall. I assumed. I enforced. I was wrong. No one asked him to do it. But that was the point. The next day, in an empty hallway no cameras watched, a maintenance worker mopped the floor. No one knew his name. No one asked. But if they looked close enough, they'd see something beneath his sleeve. A barcode, burned into skin. One word embedded in the ink. Burner. He kept moving, kept working, because this story was over. And his silence? It had already said everything. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire action and hope.